Well, out on the West Coast, usually you and I get together in San Fran. We're down here in Southern Cal.
I know.
It's not quite the MedTech mecca, but I'll take it.
It's nice and sunny.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
today
good
it is
weather.
at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to see you, Joe.
Likewise. Good to see you, Joe.
You have always been one of my coaches in the industry over the years, and I'm thankful for that.
Likewise. Thank you.
Yeah.
Always a mentor. Appreciate it.
Those relationships are so important, right? As you go through this industry.
The wonderful thing about at least this conference, LSI, less so with JPM, but really AvaMed and LSI, you get a chance to see how small this world is. It is a tiny, tiny world, and a lot of times we're so focused on our lane we don't realize that we're right next to everybody. And so, like, coming here and seeing like all the major players, it's a lot of fun.
And I wanted to grab you because, Joe, the world of selling into, in particular, hospitals has changed a lot. Just pre-COVID, there was some change underway. COVID really accelerated the change. And let's keep ambulatory surgical centers and hospitals at home on the side, because your product platform, Potrero, sells primarily into hospitals.
That's right.
And so for those that are maybe early in their commercial career or commercial pathway, or they're developing a product right now, that their call point is going to be the hospital, and maybe even the subset, ICU, CCU.
Sure.
What guidance have you gone through now over the last couple of years?
Yeah, there, pre-COVID, post-COVID. Pre-COVID, it was pretty simple. You would scale an organization, go from 5, 10, 15, 20, 40 reps, and you would execute within the hospital. And it was pretty straightforward. Now, and towards COVID, we were also starting to see a number of facilities require HEOR, healthcare economic outcomes research. What does your product do? How does it make us money? How does it save us money? What are not only the clinical outcomes, but the economic outcomes for the hospital? And that was starting to really take effect towards COVID. After COVID, and I would say post-COVID is today. During COVID, it was the hospitals were clamped down. It was very difficult to get new products in, and what we found was that we had to be super flexible. We had to focus on the economic benefits of the technology in a very weird environment where a lot of times we were trying to sell over Zoom because the hospitals were clamped down, shut down. Towards the middle of COVID, the hospitals had a number of things happen that it was a perfect storm. Their elective procedures were down. They had a nursing crisis that was unprecedented, where you had the older generation of nurses that were just throwing their hands up saying, that's it, I'm retiring. And then you had the younger generation that said, I'm gonna do something else, this is too much, it's not what I signed up for. And you have this stressed middle that is just compressed, and they're trying to figure out how to run the hospital. And what they realized very quickly is you can't run a hospital without the backbone, and that's the nurses of America. And so what happened was nurses realized their value in the market, and labor rates went through the roof. And some CEOs of hospitals said that they're 3 to 4 times over their budget from the previous year because they had to hire traveling nurses to make sure that they could run the business. And so all of that introduced very innovative methods for us to approach a hospital that doesn't have the budget. How do you take a CapEx and turn it into an OpEx? How do you operationalize something? How do you turn something that traditionally would be, you're gonna buy 100 and here's the price, and how do you turn it into a subscription where now they just subscribe to it like it's an app on your phone? And so we had to really quickly modify the way we did business and look at how we could say yes instead of no, and move in a very fluid moment so we didn't lose the business. And so it was tough.
It used to be save me time, save me money, and there's more components to it now, isn't there? It's make my life easier.
Anything that, when you go from, let's say, like even 80% where you have technical expertise in a department, down to 30 or 40 or 50%, and you're plugging gaps with people that are helping run the hospital, whether it's in the ICU or on the floor and they're traveling, they don't know each other, or there's a nursing strike or whatever it may be. The problem is if it's a manual task and you can automate that and take time away so a clinician can focus on the day-to-day, focus on the patient, not the limitations of technology, that is 100% something that is something a company should focus on. If you can show a benefit outside of just what does it do for us clinically? Does it save us money? Does it make us money? Does it take a comorbidity off of the list? Does it reduce it? Does it increase the amount of star ratings I have within the public rating systems? How does it help us as we move forward? And as this moves more towards value-based care, it's going to be 100% focused on how do you keep patients healthy and out of the hospital and not coming back to the hospital. And that's a hard thing for hospitals to do when your labor is constrained like it has been over the last couple of years.
And it makes sense, but that means that you have to be collecting a data set that proves an evidence-based impact. A hospital's set up to track that evidence through the workflow.
All right, so this is one of the things that we learned. You can do a clinical study, and it's a very formal process where you do a clinical study and you run your clinical outcomes, you understand the economic outcomes as well. But you can also do quality improvement initiatives where you find a champion within the hospital. It's a little lower of a bar, but it can have tremendous impact where let's say it's a device that comes in and says, look, this is what we've seen at other hospitals. Let's run a quality improvement initiative for 90 or 180 days and compare that to the 90 to 180 days prior. And it's just a pure QI initiative. And what happens is it's hard to debate your own numbers. And so it's very easy for a hospital to look at a clinical study and say, well, that was the Mayo Clinic, we're hospital X, Y, and Z. Or that's, we're Mayo Clinic, that's hospital X, Y, and Z. Versus going into a hospital and saying, we're gonna use this as an opportunity to improve your quality, and we're gonna put our technology to the test. I would recommend any medical device company to do that. What that requires is it requires some patience and understanding that sales cycle might not be a 30 to 60 day, it might be 90 to 180 day, but you're using their data, and if you know what you're going after, it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and that's a relatively new approach also, because we used to be on clinical, evidence.
And once you have your clinical, you go out and that's what you sell on. And you still do that, but there's going to be hurdles that have been set up because we're in a post-COVID, very cost-constrained environment where hospitals are just struggling to keep the lights on and do payroll. And so in that environment, how do you collaborate and partner with the hospital to show the benefits of the technology outside of just adding cost? Are you saying, like what you're saying, is it true? And if that's the case and you've developed a rapport with the hospital and an agreement, like a mutual agreement, if we do this, then it should work out.
So it's like a build to buy model that we're seeing in the MedTech
100%.
industry right now. Is if we do this, would it be worth this to you? And here's what the cost is. I want to jump into the SaaS subscription model that seems to be entering very quickly healthcare. And I think there's a number of reasons, and I want to pick two in particular. One is the innovation cycles that are occurring right now in general are a lot shorter, let alone in MedTech a lot shorter. So that's one. And the other is, I think 49% of the hospitals are operating at a deficit coming out of the pandemic. So you got those two things. And so if I'm acquiring a technology that likely is going to have a better technology, maybe developed by itself, almost like the car industry, 2 years from now, why am I going to buy that piece of asset that's depreciating technologically as well as economically? Why would I not want to have a reciprocating relationship and have a lease subscription model? That's where I see it going.
There's some hospitals that ask for an operational method to acquire the technology, and that same hospital, when it's presented to the CFO, will say, we only buy, which is great. You know, we win, they get what they want. But there's a number of facilities that are to your point, looking at innovative ways to do this. I've had conversations with some of the strategics that are here, and they said that they're looking at moving their entire organization. These are capital companies, and there's a handful, you can pick out which one it is. They're looking at changing everything, and they'll use the company name like X on demand, where they will shift everything to an on-demand service. Now think about it from a hospital standpoint. Why would you do that? The reason you do that is if you buy, we'll just use a robot, because let's say you buy a robot and you don't really know what or when the next robot's going to happen, and it's at the end of the quarter, you buy it, you own it, and the next quarter there's a new robot. How many times have we heard that? And all the surgeons are coming to the CEO saying, I want the new robot. And it's a great problem for the company, you know, like, sorry, you bought the robot. Now, for the hospital, this is an opportunity for them to say, I'm taking risk off the table. I can commit to a certain time frame. I can make the clinicians happy. We can serve the patients. We can keep innovation at the forefront of our facility and help everybody. It's a win-win-win. The 2 years from now, when we come out with new technology, as an example, you roll the old technology out, the new technology comes in, there might be an increase to accept like a new technology fee or whatever the new SaaS model is. You can have all of those, but I think that is going to be the future. If you fast forward 5, 10, 15 years, it's hard to think that we're going to have a capital system where capital is not in discussions by the CFO for capital for a new building, a new wing, or whatever it may be. It's going to be, how do we operationalize this so we can forecast and plan our cash accordingly, and we're not going so far into a deficit we're trying to figure out how to dig out.
Yeah, and it's not any different. The more I think this through and chat with smart people like yourselves, it's a little like my mom and dad. They didn't lease their cars, they bought their car and they ran it into the ground usually, right? And then leasing came along, especially the mid to high end models.
That's right.
Right, and those automobile companies had their own financing. And those automobile companies were happy to get you out of your lease 6 months early and incentivize you to roll you into their new vehicle. And so they started to look at the lifetime value of the customer, not just that episodic sales point of selling that piece of CapEx. And I think it's going that way.
That's right. And I would take it a step further, Joe. Like, if you look at this generation that's coming out of high school and college, a lot of them don't own cars. And so it's even one step further where it's not a lease or anything. They're using, whether it's Uber, Lyft, or another ride share or vehicle share, and they're moving away from even ownership. I think there's going to be some scenarios where a hospital can scale up and down on demand. And I think there's going to be a need for third parties. There's a couple of major players that they own the equipment and they bring it in, they can flex up and down. If there's ever a pandemic again, they have a role in this. But I think there's also an opportunity for a company to come in and do the same thing, where you can scale up on whatever, name the capital equipment, and do that.
And it's interesting because our hospitals respectively, and they're so important to our community, our country, our world, is they've become too institutionalized. They've become ossified in their business practices. And I think introducing that business agility might be one of the best things that can happen to healthcare moving forward.
Well, competition always raises the bar, and I think what you're going to see is with the shift to the ASCs, and if the hospitals aren't invested in those ASCs, they're going to be losing business. And in a capitalism market, like a capital market, you're going to have a situation where they're going to have to find ways to innovate. They're going to have to find ways to bring in technologies. If they have a hospital across the street that is outmaneuvering them from an innovation standpoint, and the surgeons are going there because they have the tools and equipment, I think you're going to see some technologies that are leapfrogging what we see today as innovation. And just having a couple of conversations at this meeting, I've seen where the future is going, and if people aren't bringing in those types of technologies, it's going to be laparoscopy taking surgery all over again, robotics taking laparoscopy all over again. So if you don't maneuver quickly, what you lose to the ASCs, you'll also lose what's left to the hospital that has that technology.
That's a really good point. Well, Joe, I always love our conversations
Me too,
with
man.
each other, man.
It's always fun.
Always.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Joe. I'm Joe Mullings from the floor of MedTech Conference in Anaheim. Be well.